Today I'm going to be finishing the University of Valhalla by building a greenhouse and an observatory that definitely didn't end up looking phallic in any way, shape or form. What are you thinking of? No, it of course doesn't. Anyway, starting off with the greenhouse. I have no idea where that intro came from, but when it comes to the greenhouse, it's not accurate for the time period that Valhalla and the rest of this fantasy world that I've created so far with my projects is set in, which is medieval / Renaissance era, and the rest of the fantasy world is Observatory, Valhalla of course, and also the secret project, which I hope to be able to show you something of in the coming weeks. But in a medieval / Renaissance time period, they probably wouldn't have greenhouses, or at least, well, greenhouses I don't think came into being until like late 18th century, but there is the caveat of this being a fantasy world, and that means that, at least for me, I can give myself a free pass as long as I make the building believable. And the way that I made it believable is by using those glass pieces that the Africa pack gave us, which, as you can see, I tinted them actually completely black, but in the original they are, well, they have like very bright tinted colors. But if you tint it black, the paint becomes completely see-through, or the glass, because, well, to make it believable, I didn't want to have these big glass panes that we had in the original, or that were given with the original game. I wanted to have those glass set in frames like you see in old buildings and churches and everything, because they couldn't produce like those huge glass panes back then. So they had to have multiple smaller glass pieces set in this larger frame, and I say they look beautiful. Or at least this building looks beautiful. And I know I'm like tooting my own horn, but like, I love this build. It shouldn't probably be here, but it just looks pretty, and in lore or in universe this actually makes kind of sense. Because the University of Valhalla is supposed to be more geared towards nature and such, so it makes sense that they would try or have a greenhouse. With try, I mean that this greenhouse doesn't actually have to work, even in world. It doesn't really have to work, but I would suggest that it does work. It's just very, well, I wanted to say labor intensive, but it's not really that either. It's just some poor old bloke has to sit by the fire, or at least keep a fire going 24/7 to keep this greenhouse warm. So there is like a livable area. I made it like 2 stories so that there is an area that, or a story that is like the living space of whoever keeps this fire going. But yeah, it's probably not like a job that you would do for your entire life. But again, I do hope that he gets paid well, because he basically has to sit by a fire 24/7, just trying to keep this greenhouse warm. But with this greenhouse, I also needed to not forget to make a chimney. A lot of my buildings in Valhalla, I forgot to build a chimney. Like, I can kind of get away with that in Bashar, because Bashar is a desert climate, so not only does it not need greenhouses, also the secret project wouldn't need greenhouses based on the climate. But in Valhalla, I need to build chimneys, because they would otherwise just freeze to death in winter. So to make Valhalla believable, I need to actually build a lot more chimneys and not forget them, like I usually do. But again, in Bashar, I can kind of get away with it. In Valhalla, yeah, I need to remind myself to build chimneys, because half of the buildings right now don't have them. I actually, when it came to like the village that I built connected to this university, I was just like, I need to not forget to build chimneys this time. Torstad doesn't have chimneys. The brewery doesn't have a chimney. Yeah, a brewery where there's a lot of like steam and just, you know, fires being used, like fireplaces and such, because brewery needs cooking and stuff, so that would need a fire based on the time period. Yeah, that building would probably explode because it doesn't have a chimney, and I need to build a chimney for it. But yeah, that's another thing that I constantly forget to build chimneys. And I wanted to say I constantly forget to build bridges, but no, I just don't like building bridges. So I avoid it. Like, it's one of those things that I constantly be like, I'm going to do it later. Yeah, I'm going to do it later. The observatory also doesn't have a chimney, but then the observatory doesn't really need a chimney. I don't think people would be there, like, well, they probably would be there for quite a long time, but as soon as it gets, well, actually, yes, it needs a chimney. Because it's an observatory. It probably works best at night, and at night it's cold, so... Oh god, I need to build another chimney. Oh... Well, actually, no, that wouldn't work, because the observatory, like, the roof rotates, so... Then the chimney would just obstruct that, so... Yeah, just bring a big coat when you go into the observatory of Valhalla. Like, I love that, like... Oh, I need to build a chimney. Oh no, it doesn't work. Yeah, let's run with that excuse of it doesn't work. Definitely couldn't run a chimney by the side of the building. It has to go through the roof. I used excuses so many times. Anyway, when it came to the main building, because I got sidetracked here, I didn't include that many windows. And that's actually for a reason, because I wanted to again make this building believable. It doesn't need to actually be accurate, but it just needs to be believable enough that it doesn't like pull you out of the immersion of Valhalla over this world. So by that, I needed to make it look that this building was very well insulated, because all of the heat from the fire would need to be contained in this building. Otherwise, the greenhouse doesn't really work. If you can't keep it warm, then it's just a building in glass, and it's going to be freezing in winter as well, which is what you don't want to have with a greenhouse. So I purposely didn't build that many windows in this building, because even though there's glass used in this building, so there wouldn't be just like that open in the medieval era / Renaissance era. A lot of like peasant buildings and such wouldn't use glass. A lot of, I think only like well-to-do people would be able to afford glass, because again it was quite a chore to make and quite pricey. But it would still be an area in the building where heat can escape easily, because it's thinner. So didn't have a lot of windows in this build on purpose, just so that like all of the heat stays contained in this building and can only really escape in the greenhouses itself. And also, yeah, I made my own planters, because I didn't like the planters that Frontier gave us, which isn't a new thing. I usually try to build custom stuff, because a lot of the pieces that Frontier gave us, of course, it's Planet Zoo. Even though I use it as Planet Builder, because I noticed that I've rarely built for animals lately, I want to make things that don't really fit into a zoo game and more into like a world builder game or builder game. So that means I need to build a lot of things custom. But now we are moving on to the actual observatory. And again, this definitely didn't end up looking phallic in any way, shape or form. But then, I mean, if you look at observatories, and this observatory was inspired by the university building that you would get or would have in the 5th Settlers game. I think it was the 5th. Yeah, the 6th one was Rise of Empires. The 5th one was Heritage of Kings, which I still stand by that those two were the best Settler games in my opinion. Like, I love playing those the most. Like Settlers 7 I really didn't like actually, because I don't know, well, Settlers 6 Rise of Empires was basically a city builder, so of course that draws my attention. And the Settlers 5, I think I just liked how it looked. Like, there's that like fantasy element to it, but it looks believable enough. I am a sucker for if a game looks visually appealing to me, then I completely forget everything else. And also, yes, I definitely use the campaign maps of these 5th settlers just to build cities. Like, I like to... Well, those campaign maps were just... they looked prettier. I'm really a sucker for just making things or having things look pretty. Anyway, when it comes to the observatory, I basically wanted it to have like multiple levels. Like, first level was like these rough stone walls, which like I really love building those. And this actually, well, there's a side tangent that I'm going to go on later, but to first focus on this, which is rare for me to focus on something. But I first wanted to have this level of like rough stone walls. Then I wanted it to somewhat transition into this more like stone blocks and this more like fancy thing. And then I wanted it to tie back into the rest of the University of Valhalla, which is basically just these log walls, or these logs. And then it slowly went into the actual observatory part, which made it look slightly phallic, but then I would say most observatories kind of, well, it's a cylindrical shape. Usually it's not that long, like I made this one quite long, but then it has, well, in this case it has a top area which is rounded and is slightly, it looks just slightly phallic to me, alright? And it has a opening on top where it's rounded, and I just have a dirty mind. Like, my 13-year-old brain came into place here. That wasn't a correct sentence. Anyway, moving on. So, the tangent that I wanted to go on was... what was it again? Oh yeah. I don't know where I saw this, but I think it was Reddit or something. I think it was Reddit. I'm not completely sure, but I think it was on Reddit, but somebody once said to me like, oh yeah, I used to like Poisonblade, but then his builds became less detailed, and then for some reason that just stuck into my brain of like, I don't think my builds are less detailed, I just think I'm become quicker at them. Like, when I started using these rough, like nature or natural looking walls, it would take a lot of time, but now I've gotten so used to them that I can whip one up in like a minute, and then I'm just like, I now know the balance between like what is like well detailed and what's just chaotic. Like, sometimes you just need less details for the details that you do put in to shine through. I would say that back in the times I would definitely put details in just to have details, or just to have more pieces basically in it. So this might seem like I'm trying to defend myself, but I honestly just don't think that I make my builds less detailed. I mean, my PC definitely doesn't think I make my builds less detailed, because Valhalla has started to become a little bit laggy. Just the slightest bit. It's definitely not on Bashar levels yet, but with the amount of trees that I put in, and well, with the University of Valhalla being like all custom walls, it definitely, my PC is starting to like Valhalla less and less. Which is funny, because Valhalla was supposed to be the less detailed or less like built up of the two projects. So Valhalla was supposed to be like the vacation project basically for my PC. And now it's not. I mean, the secret project is going to be smaller, so that would be the vacation project for my PC right now, but yeah, my PC has started tearing up. Like, Bashar just gives my PC full on nightmares, and it's traumatic, and just like, you know, my PC just doesn't like Bashar. Valhalla is like, it's kind of tearing up, and then, well, the secret project is just, it's going to be a lot smaller, so that does also give me room to actually be very detailed and just use a lot of pieces, a lot of custom walls. So I'm looking at my PC right now and I'm just like, good luck. Like, if my PC could talk, it would just scream at me. Like, my PC would just scream. Nothing else, just screaming and crying. Like, would be sobbing. Anyway, building the actual observatory, or making it an actual observatory, the amount of times that I had to remake this telescope part, because I make it too large. So I always needed to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. I think there were 4 or 3 different versions that I had to make, because it wouldn't fit into the beams of the actual roof. Also, again, yes, I think most observatories look slightly phallic, because it's a long cylindrical thing. The upper part is usually smaller, rounded, and has an opening just like a penis. And yeah, sometimes I have the brain of a 13-year-old. In the morning I have the brain of a 80-year-old, because I don't reply to comments in the morning just because I am grumpy. Although if I need to call a company or like something, like if I think I once had this with like a delivery or something that I bought online and it just wouldn't come or anything. I deliberately called them early in the morning, because even if I'm polite, I am very just to the point in the morning. Like, I am actually kind of sorry for the lady on the other end, because I definitely sound a lot less... Well, I just sound very strict in the morning. Anyway, here's a tidbit of my personality that nobody asked for. In the morning, I can be a dick. Well, not a dick, I'm just like... There's no friendliness in my voice, basically, because I'm not a morning person at all. Oh yeah, here's another attempt at making the telescope. Let's move on from the Poisonblade is a dick in the morning. Well, I'm basically just... In the morning, I just transform into old man Poisonblade. But yeah, if I need to talk to a company because they didn't deliver what I bought online or something like that, or I need to just ask about something and I want to sound more professional or strict, I purposely call early in the morning, because I know I won't give any shits in the morning. Like, I will be a lot friendlier if I try to call them at like in the evening or just later in the day. In the morning, you get old man Poisonblade. So if you see that I'm not replying to a comment, it's probably early in the morning for me, or I'm sleeping, which I can't comment or reply when I'm sleeping. This voiceover didn't make any sense grammatically, I know, but that's not anything new. But yeah, it's probably early in the morning and I don't reply to comments then, because I just can be a little bit too serious to my taste when it comes to me early in the morning. So yeah, anyway, nobody asked for that information, but here it is. Here's why I don't reply to comments early in the morning. Just because you're not getting the friendliest Poisonblade early in the morning. Anyway, back to the observatory, and actually back to this video in general. This video was cut down a lot, because, well, also we're building backwards, because the greenhouse was the last thing that I built, but it made for a good thumbnail image, so I put it in front. But the observatory was the first thing that I built. The second thing that I built was a gatehouse to the actual university, but that gatehouse would have made this video 40 minutes long. So if you want to see me build that gatehouse, just put it down below in the comments and I will put it in the next video. But I cut out that entire gatehouse because I didn't want this video to be 40 minutes long, because I'm also going to include a tour of the finished University of Valhalla, because I felt like doing one actually. Like, there's not really that much of an excuse or any other reason. I just felt like doing a tour of the university because I actually finished a build for once. So let's move on to the tour. So we're back for the live portion of today's video, and I'm going to say that the university so far is one of the best builds in Valhalla, maybe even the best one, but it's definitely eye candy. And you know that I'm going to take a lot of screenshots just from this position, because you have the observatory in all its glory with the telescope peeking out. You have this tower, which I don't know what the purpose of it is, but it's pretty. And then you have the greenhouses with poor old Albert stoking the fires, trying to keep this greenhouse warm. And yes, I've been watching a lot of Victorian documentaries. Bite me. Anyway, so as soon as the village is done, because this looks pretty, turn around and all the immersion is broken. But as soon as the village is complete, I know that I will make like a cinematic video, because the university is just like, it's eye candy. Valhalla is basically also eye candy. Like, I would want to study in this university, just because like as soon as you go outside of the university, like the university itself is eye candy, but Valhalla is just the perfect place to go like hiking and wandering. You might get eaten by a bear or a wolf, but the views would be worth it. Like, you would die happily. I made it dark again, didn't I? Also, just a side note that I'm going to expand on later, all of the walls in Torstedt need to be redone. So before that, let's go on to the greenhouses. I'm not going to go into it because Gadgetcam and going into buildings don't work. I will get stuck, but you will see a lot of, well, plants, but also tropical plants that you might recognize from Kernel Shar, because they would actually work in this greenhouse. They wouldn't work outside of the greenhouse, but because the greenhouses are warm, they would work here. And again, poor old Albert is just stoking the fire, keeping a watch on the fire 24/7. I wouldn't think he was poor, because I think that he would probably be well paid, because he's basically paid to sit in front of a fire all day. And maybe he's not even that old, but again, university is just eye candy. Like, I will keep saying this, but I think it's one of the most scenic builds. Maybe the best build, but at least like it looks so far the prettiest. It's also one of the builds that is somewhat finished. I still need to clutter it up, so I can't really say that's completely finished, but anyway, moving further. We're going too slow for me, so I'm going to run. But here is the gatehouse that didn't make it into today's video, mostly because it follows the same techniques and the same style as all of the other buildings. But I do have the footage, so if you guys really want to see this gatehouse being built, I can put it in the next video. But yeah, it feels like a proper entrance into the university. And just a reminder, this entire university was built because I didn't want to admit that this was a tavern. I built this completely as a tavern, and then I decided I don't want the implication of me building another tavern and like building way too many taverns. Like, I didn't like the implication that I might have a drinking problem, but it worked out well. And yeah, there's definitely one building that has the focus when it comes to lighting. Like, this building actually kind of suffers when it comes to lighting because it's constantly in the shadows, except for this tower, which looks pretty and was probably like the most like mind-breaking build. But yeah, the lighting just really hits this, like it hits the main building perfectly. But then lighting in Planet Zoo is like one of the biggest like draws of the game. Like, if it didn't have this lighting and didn't have the graphics, I would probably have moved back to Planet Coaster. But the lighting is just perfect. And then also this university, well, when the village is done, don't mind the scrapyard, but when the village is done, it's eye candy galore. Like, it's perfect. But, well, don't get stuck, Poison, don't get stuck. We know that you tend to do that. But anyway, moving on to one of the viewpoints, because this university also showcases all of the big builds or the most important builds. With big builds, I of course mean Torstedt, which I need to redo all of the walls. Like before like 2-3 months ago, I didn't have the exact color of the natural rocks. Now I have a workshop item. It's the only workshop item that I really use because I pride myself on making everything myself. Or yeah, everything. I also use like the archer if I really want to get some scaling right. But the workshop item, basically somebody painstakingly matched the colors of the faux rocks to the natural rocks, so I'm using those now constantly to match those colors, or basically copy the colors of the faux rocks onto any of the stones that I use. But Torstedt predates that, so Torstedt is actually slightly too green when it comes to the stones. The Wizard's Tower is passable somehow, I don't know how, because the Wizard's Tower predates Torstedt if I'm correct. But yeah, I need to either redo all of the walls or painstakingly recolor them. But yeah, the university offers a view of Torstedt, which I think is where most of the professors, scholars, maybe even the students live. I don't think they would really live in the university itself, especially like the scholars and professors. I mean, it's probably a prestige thing of like them having their own like big houses, either in Torstedt or in the village. And then you have the, well, I don't actually remember the name of this village. I think it's kind of Vindhul or Windhul, but it's pretty. It's also one of the other important builds. Well, of course, there's the Wizard's Tower, Torstedt, the village that I forgot the name of, and then there's the other important build. Not so much because it's large, but because it's basically created Valhalla. Like, it created this entire project. And yes, I made something completely unnecessary. I made a outdoor like classroom, like a seating area so you can have outdoor classes. I made a chalkboard. I want to put some stuff on it, but I haven't so far. Like, I want to put like maybe constellations and such on it. But then the other big build is the Narnian build, which basically inspired all of Valhalla. The Narnian build was supposed to be a one-off build, but Valhalla basically grew out of it because I really liked using the style of the build. So yeah, the university features or showcases all of the important builds of Valhalla, or like the main builds. And then, well, we also have this building, which I didn't record. It, unlike the gatehouse, didn't record it, but I don't think it was necessary for me to record this building because it follows like the same building styles as the main house and the style of basically everything else. So while I did record the gatehouse, I didn't record this building just because it felt basically completely unnecessary to record. But it's there to kind of fill up the space and make this feel a little bit more built up as compared to the village, because I do think that this is probably going to be one of the last big builds in Valhalla. The rest of the builds in Valhalla are going to be more just like nature. Oh, you can actually see the statue of Ulver from here. Again, the university just offers so much eye candy that I want to study here just for the views, and maybe getting mauled by a bear if I start hiking around the place. That's a joke. I don't go hiking. I barely go outside. But Valhalla would tempt me. Also, just coming from here, not only with this mountain actually in the background, that actually works also just really well, but with just everything, the greenhouses. Again, as soon as the village is complete, I will do a cinematic video just because this place deserves one, and I want to gawk at my own build. But yeah, poor old Albert is stoking the fire. I keep saying poor old Albert, even though he's probably, like, you know, he makes a livable wage. And maybe he's not that old. Like, he's probably young, and it's like a job that you do for like the not first few years of your life, but like when you're younger, and then you move on to another job later on because you're basically being paid to watch a fire burn and stoke a fire and keep the fire going. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I cackled on for way too long already, so if you enjoyed this video, there is the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. There's also a notification button, but before that one starts working, I will finish Kern Observatory. With that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and bye bye.